So today's recipe is going to be what's called a Khachapuri, which is a dish out of Georgia. Something my daughter requested for me to make, so I figured I'd give it a shot. So we start off with 3/4 of a cup of milk. The recipe originally called for 1/4 of a cup of milk. You'll see it doesn't work that way, so I ended up adding another 1/2 of a cup of milk. Plus you put in a tablespoon of sugar and then 2 tablespoons of yeast. Then add a cup and 3/4 of flour and knead that until it turns into a dough. You'll notice that and add 2 tablespoons of salt as well. I like to use pink Himalayan salt. You'll notice that at first this isn't coming together because this is just 1/4 of a cup of milk, but I added another 1/2 cup and it came together fine as a rather shaggy dough. After I messed with it for a little while, you'll see in a second it just magically becomes more usable. But if you start off with 3/4 of a cup, you'll end up with this type of dough start. You'll see it's kind of shaggy, but that'll change as we knead it and let it rise and go through the different processes with the dough. Now, I like to do bowl kneading in it because it kind of keeps the mess off the countertop, especially in this stage whenever the dough is so shaggy. So now, I'm going to put some oil in a bowl. I'm going to put the dough in there, coat it with it so that the air doesn't cause the surface to get hard. I'm going to cover that. I'm going to set it aside for about an hour and let that rise. And in the process of letting that happen, I'm going to take out another bowl. I'm going to add in some feta cheese. I'm also going to add in some low-fat mozzarella cheese. And then, just because I always tweak recipes, I also put in a little bit of cheddar cheese. You can do that. You don't have to do that. The recipe doesn't call for it, but I thought it would add a little sharpness to it, even though that's a mild cheddar. Added a little bit to it. Then you're going to crack an egg in there, and you're going to knead this with your hands. And you're just going to do that until the egg is good and combined into the mixture, and that whenever you squeeze it, it turns into a little ball. Then we're going to set that aside. We're going to pull our dough back out now, and you can see that the dough has risen, has become kind of soft and shiny. We're going to roll that out on a floured surface because it's still kind of a wet dough. We're going to roll that out on a floured surface. And this, I wish that I had done a little more kneading with it so that it was a little more uniform. But it still worked out. We turned it into rectangles. And then on the sides of the rectangles, I added some pepper jack cheese. And then I just take it and roll the edges of the dough over the top of it and kind of make it almost like a stuffed crust pizza is kind of the thought there. And now you've got these two ridges that are on each side with a channel down the center. Now you're going to fill that channel with your cheese mixture. And you're going to fill it as full as you possibly can. And then once you have that filled and mounded up, then you're going to take your outside edges, you're going to pull those, and then you're going to twist them to kind of close in that channel and turn it into almost kind of like a little boat, a little cheese boat. And you're going to take that. Now, I really should have done all of this on top of a piece of parchment paper so I didn't have to transfer it. It transferred fine, but it would have been a little less trouble had I just started off on the parchment paper. And you're going to want that parchment paper in there for whenever you're baking it. So I made 3 of these. Actually, I made 2 of these, and I made another one that I'll tell you about in a second. But then you take some melted butter, and you brush the outside edges of the dough with your melted butter. That's going to give your dough a nice golden brown look whenever it's done baking. And so on the one on the far left there, I don't really like feta cheese, to tell you the truth, and I'm not crazy about soft scrambled egg, which is what we're going to end up with towards the end. So in this one, I just made myself basically a little pizza. I threw some pepperoni in there, threw some mozzarella cheese on top of it. I'm going to bake that along with the other ones, and that's actually what I'm going to have for dinner. But my wife and my daughter like feta. So then I put it I put all of them on a pizza stone that had been preheated to 425 degrees and put those into the oven. Let those cook until the outside edges get golden brown. Now, you pull it out of the oven. I left it on the rack, but then you take a couple of spoons, spread it open, and then you take an egg and you crack an egg into the center of that little well that you made, and you put it back in the oven and cook it again until the egg white starts to get slightly translucent on the edges. And as you can see in this picture right there, the yolk is still runny, but the white has become kind of translucent. Then you give it to the person that's going to eat it, and you let them do this part. But they take that molten cheese and they mix it in with the egg, and that molten cheese cooks that egg yolk and turns it into kind of like a little bit of a cheesy scrambled egg, or cheesy scrambled egg basically. And this is the end result of what it looks like. You break off the pieces of bread and scoop out the center. Use those as your eating utensils basically. Scoop out the center and eat it. It turned out really good. I encourage you to try this recipe. If you do try it, put a comment in the bottom. Tell me how it turns out. Let me know what else you'd like for me to make as well.